Have you ever heard of an inescapable prison? A place so secure that not even the most notorious criminals can break free. Well, that's exactly where I am now, Alcatraz. My name's James and I'm here to take you inside this infamous prison, unveil its secrets and discover why it is considered inescapable.
Welcome to Alcatraz, everyone.
For $1, we can get ourselves a map. So when you get here, you first have to climb up 13 flights of stairs, but it's a ramp all the way up. That's going to take you up to the cell blocks. It's hard to believe, but this wasn't always a prison. It was a military fort with soldiers to defend the San Francisco Bay. It's interesting to think about the soldiers that were stationed here, because in a way they were also confined. It makes you wonder whether there was a difference between the prisoners and the military folk that were here. So when you get into the main prison, they're going to send you to pick up your audio guide, and it's actually in the shower room, which is one long strip of shower heads where everyone would have showered all together. This is crazy. There are 40 shower heads here, and they originally had stalls, but in 1950 they got removed so that guards were able to oversee the inmates and protect them from assault. Inmates would shower only 2 times a week, and I wonder if the water was heated or if it was as cold as the water outside. Let's grab our audio tour and head upstairs and see where they lived. So we have just made it into the prison. This is the first impression of it, and it is actually insane. The size of the cells is so small. It's like such a weird feeling that you get like in your chest when you see that, because if you realize that that is what the prisoners actually had to live in and their lives were. They're absolutely tiny. You have zero privacy, and there's just layer upon layer. And I can show you in a video, of course, but until you see how big it actually is in real life, it's actually really crazy. So this is literally one of the sizes of the cells. I can put my hands on both sides and touch the ceiling. That's like crazy to think that this is all you would have if you were here in Alcatraz. Imagine being trapped in this tiny cell, 24 hours a day, with only the cold wind and the cries of seagulls for company. The daily routine was incredibly strict. Every minute was accounted for, and any infraction of the rules resulted in swift and harsh punishment, such as solitary confinement, loss of privileges, only allowed bread and water, etc. So right here is the prison library, and felons would actually consume 75 to 100 books a year. It was the only way that they could mentally escape from the tortures of the prison. Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers planned one of the most daring escapes in the Alcatraz history. You might be curious to what landed these guys in prison. Well, they were robbery experts, with their biggest heist being held in Alabama, where they managed to get over $100,000 from the banks. These guys were no ordinary criminals. They were smart, resourceful, and determined to break free from the rock. For months, they meticulously planned their escape. They used spoons, saw blades, and even a homemade drill to widen the ventilation ducts in their cells. They created dummy heads to fool the guards during nighttime checks, and they even constructed a raft made out of raincoats and glue. An ingenious and incredible desperation to leave. On the night of June 11, 1962, they made their move. They slipped through the ventilation ducts, climbed to the roof, and then descended to the water's edge. They inflated their makeshift raft and disappeared into the darkness. So nobody knows what actually happened to Frank and the Anglin brothers. Did they make it out? Did they get past the frigid waters? Are they out there living under some unknown identity amongst us?
The mystery remains unsolved, but one thing's for sure, the escape of Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers has become a legend, a symbol of the enduring human desire for freedom.
Well guys, this is what a solitary confinement cell actually looks like, and this is actually awful. You come in here, the ceiling is really low, everything is really echoey and harrowing. Behind me here it says man was never intended to live as a caged animal. And that is pretty true. One thing that I do reflect on while I'm in this environment is discovering that there was no hope for anyone here to be able to get out of here. If you came to Alcatraz, you were going to stay and spend the rest of your life here. So not only are you trapped in like these tiny solitary confinements, but you also know that there's no way that you're ever going to get out of it, and this is where you've come to die. It's really scary to think about. Imagine being trapped in here for like 17 years, knowing that this is going to be the rest of your life until you die. You have no ambition to be able to better yourself, and it really makes you think about the prison system as a whole, why there's no reform or how they treat the prisoners. And I know for a fact when I was 18 versus who I am now, I've changed so much. So just imagine over all the years how much these prisoners would have changed and reflected on, and never had that chance to be able to be somebody else. Robert Stroud's time in prison was a total of 52 years. He spent a lot of time moving from prison to prison and ended up here in Alcatraz. The one reoccurring theme is he ended up living in solitary confinement for a total of 17 years over that span. It's a sobering thought, isn't it, to spend more than half of your life completely alone in one of these tiny cells, unable to talk to anyone, and this is practically your shower cell. So when we came in, there was the shower room where everyone goes and I guess they can communicate and talk a little bit. This is it. This is what you get.
In his book, Stroud describes solitary confinement as a living death. He claimed to hear strange sounds and voices in his cell, and he often felt like he was being watched.
Even though Stroud was allowed some time in this very recreation yard, walking around in the same familiar pattern, it could not have been easy, going from that tiny cell to a small amount of time allowed out here and then going back to the confines of that cell. So Robert Stroud became the Birdman of Alcatraz, and when he was in prisons prior, he actually kept birds, reared them up and sold them, and that was his way of making money. But when he moved to Alcatraz, he was no longer able to keep the birds and was kept in solitary confinement here. And the irony of it is Alcatraz is actually named after the pelican, and it's a strange bird. So the Birdman came here and no longer had the ability to keep the birds.
Robert Stroud's life was far from easy. He experienced abuse and hardship from a young age, and while his crimes were serious, it's not hard to feel some empathy for the difficult path he was forced to walk. In the end, Stroud died in a medical prison facility in Missouri at age 73 years old. He never knew freedom again.
It is freezing out here, and I cannot imagine how it would have been for the inmates. It would have been absolutely brutal. I'm bundled up, I got a hoodie and a jacket on. I don't know if they would have been given that same treatment. So despite coming out here for their exercise and their daily routine, especially in winter, this would have been just as bad as being in the cell. Like, it would have been crazy. In the recreation yard, there's a door that is right on the edge of the yard, and if you come and walk through this door, which the prisoners would never have seen behind, you come out here and it takes you to a wonderful view of San Francisco and the Golden Gate Bridge. So behind me is the dining room, and the prisoners said that this is the best food that they've ever had in a federal prison. The ceilings here are equipped with tear gas because they always prepared for trouble just in case it was going to happen, but it didn't happen, so luckily they didn't have to use it, which means that it could detonate at any time, meaning we're all going to get tear gassed. But I don't think that's going to happen today. The story of Alcatraz doesn't end with its prisoners and escapees. There's another side. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, Alcatraz has a very spooky atmosphere. It definitely brings the past into the present and blurs the lines between the living and the dead. Many inmates claim to have seen or experienced haunted things happening while they're here. Jim Quillen in 1940 actually claimed to see the ghost of one of the former inmates that was actually murdered in the laundry room. And Alcatraz is often featured on quite a lot of the ghost haunting shows that are out there on TV as well. And it's not difficult to imagine why, because we're currently in the solitary confinement wing, all by ourselves, there's nobody else here. And there's like strange creaking noises that are coming from the walls. I think it's the window panes and stuff, but who knows. And it's kind of interesting because we could go and sit in one of these cells right now and just sit here and meditate and see if there's anything freaky happening. Do you guys think we should do that? Would you do that?
William Baker described this place as a place of suffering, claiming he could hear ghostly cries of men who died in their prisons past. Henry Young claimed he was visited by a ghost who was killed in the prison. They had conversations in solitary confinement, and Frank Weatherman described this as a place of evil, hearing ghostly footsteps in the halls and seeing a former guard who had died on the island.
We're just getting to the end of the tour, and we've come in this room at the end, and it is fascinating because they've got a list of people who are in prison, incarcerated, or on parole, and 1 in 37 Americans are actually within the prison system, which is insane. I'm going to try on the handcuffs. That would not be comfortable at all. Oh my god, these ones look like the ones that you buy, right? I can get my hand out that one. It'd be awful, right?
Alcatraz is more than just a prison. It's a time capsule, a place where history comes alive.
We are coming to the end of our video here at Alcatraz, and it has been quite the experience. It is pretty crazy. If you're in San Francisco, this is definitely something that you need to hit up and see because it's definitely eye-opening for one. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video on our next travels.